If you like to fish, have you noticed you're not hooking as many big ones as you used to? It's not just you. A global team of scientists looked at a massive decades-long data set with the body sizes of all sorts of species, from fish to mammals to plants. Not all groups had obvious trends, but one was clear-cut. Fish are shrinking. To explain why is our science specialist Darius Mahdavi. Darius, why are they shrinking?
That's the big question, and it's part of what makes this study so exciting, because the researchers were using this massive data set that goes back decades. They could actually tease apart why these communities of species were shrinking. Now, on the most basic level, there's a few ways you could expect this to happen, so take a look here. The first one is that the species themselves, the individuals within the species, are getting smaller. There's some pressure that means that the bigger individuals don't do as well as the smaller ones, so over generations, they shrink. The second is that the bigger species themselves are leaving or dying out entirely, and then that leaves more room for these smaller species to take over, so the average size in the community goes down that way. But there's also a third possibility, which is that both of those things happen at once. The bigger species die out or decrease in individuals, and then the individuals that are left of the smaller species also shrink in size. And so the researchers found that in this case, both of those things were happening. But we can also dig deeper. We live in the Anthropocene, an era where our planet is completely dominated by humans. And what sort of animals do humans want to hunt? We want the biggest. Bigger is better for meat, shellfish, and seafood, and whatever else. And according to Amanda Bates, one of the study's authors and a professor and chair in ocean conservation at the University of Victoria, climate change can also be a big factor.
In general, when we look at the warm versus the cold end of a range of a species, what we often find is that on the warmer edge of a range for a species, that individuals are a little smaller. So you might expect that warming oceans are going to lead to that downsizing of populations.
Darius, how concerned should we be by these findings?
At this point, it's hard to say. Now, there are some concerns about what this could mean for ecosystems. A loss of the biggest fish, which are often apex predators, can have massive cascading effects. But so far, ocean communities seem to be at least somewhat resilient to these changes. The study found that where there were declines in large species, small species became more abundant. In other words, the biomass, the measure of how much living matter is in a community, didn't change, a finding Bates was very excited by.
Even though we started really by being interested in this interaction with humans and the Anthropocene and impacts, in natural systems, it really points to some fundamental, ecological rules for how life is, kind of governed on this planet. So we basically are seeing this biomass consistency, which I thought was pretty interesting from a scientific perspective.
So this really highlights the value of these massive publicly available data sets. When you have that much information at your fingertips, you can find answers to big questions you didn't even know you were asking.
Fascinating stuff. Darius Mahdavi, thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan.